If you are under the age of 18, you should not be listening to this podcast.
Also, this is your official spoiler warning. There will be all the spoilers.
All the spoilers. Heavy spoilers.
Very heavy.
Very heavy. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Welcome to North Harbor Podcast. I'm Rebecca Sedai.
And I'm Adelona Sedai. And we are changing things up this week.
A little bit. We are on an Olver chapter. And since Olver is definitely a child, we are not going to be doing any of our normal kinky fuckery. Because this needs to be handled with care.
Yep. Child. Kid
yes.
Gloves, if you will.
A child. Yes, this is a kid-friendly episode.
Yes.
Of North Harbor.
Yes. Yeah, we will not have our usual openers.
We will continue with Tweets of the Week, though.
Absolutely.
So
I'm going to go ahead and get the obligatory shout out to the Hinder stream. Because,
there you go.
That's...
Thing is still going.
It is. And there's a whole Discord with the t-shirt thing going on for Jordan Con, and
those are some great t-shirts too. Yeah, they look amazing.
They do.
My tweet of the week is to a very good friend of ours, Kitsune Nagari, aka Uno, and Aganor.
Yes.
Are now wedded.
Yes.
And the other really cool thing is that Guy Roberts, aka Uno on the TV show, retweeted them and said it's about bloody time.
Yes.
Which is amazing. So to them, and may you have lots and lots of love and happiness over the years. And we wish you all the very best. So
yeah, and I saw somewhere on that tweet thread that they've been together for 15 years, and I was like, that is a long time. All right, cool.
Yeah, and amazing.
It's about time.
Way to go. Yeah, right? It is about bloody time.
Yes. Congratulations. That's awesome. And I'm loving it.
Happiness. Another thing we would like to do is just take a moment for the people of Ukraine. This week in the real world, Russia invaded Ukraine, and it is sad. And we are covering the Olver chapter, and it just brought to light as we're going through and reading everything that this is what kids go through, during war, during battles. And so we're just going to take a moment of quiet right now. So if you are listening to us, do not adjust your podcast. We're just going to be quiet. All right. Again, that is, we send all of our prayers to Ukraine and to those who are trying to keep their lives, their livelihoods, their homes. So on we go to Olver's point of view in the last battle chapter. There is a lot that goes on in this perspective.
Yeah.
So we'll just start out. Olver walked, hunched, under the bundle of arrows tied to his back. They had to have real weight. He had insisted. What would happen if one of the Shadow's people inspected the goods and found that his pack had light cloth stuffed in the middle? And that would be the worst.
That would be the worst. I mean, smart kid.
He is a very smart kid. He
Yeah.
picks up a lot from all of his uncles.
Yes, he does.
So then he says, the bundle wasn't that heavy, of course. That wouldn't stop him from squeezing some sympathy out of Satal once they were back. He needed to practice doing things like that, or he'd end up as hopeless as Matt.
I love that.
I know, it's adorable.
It is.
So he talks about his feet are covered in dust. His clothes would not even make good rags at this point. He doesn't have shoes on. Earlier, Fael and the band had attacked one of the pitiful caravans trailing toward the Shadow's supply depot. It hadn't been much of a fight, only 3 dark friends and 1 oily merchant guarding a string of worn-out half-fed captives. Fael had offered them freedom, sending them southward, but only half had gone. The rest had insisted on joining her and marching for the last battle, though Olver had seen beggars on the streets with more meat on them than these fellows. Still, it helped Fael's line look authentic.
It did, yes.
It's all about the show. Kid. Oh, man. So, a couple of guards, not Aiel, but more of those dark friends, called out for the line to stop, and Aravine, dark friend alert, Aravine, this one gets me, walked forward wearing the clothing of the merchant they'd killed. Fael was obviously Saldean, and it had been decided that she might be too distinctive to play the part of the merchant dark friend. So Aravine puts on an act, and this is also super cute. Those fools, Aravine said, and then spat to the side. Olver hid a smile. Her entire countenance changed. She knew how to play a part. They're dead where I left them. Told them not to wander last night. I don't know what took the 3, but we found them at the edge of camp. Bloated, their skin black. She looked 6. I think something laid eggs in their hollowed out stomachs, and we didn't want to find what hatched.
Yeah, that's gross.
Pretty gross. Fael's soldiers were mixed among the Kandori captives. They tried their best to hold the right posture. You woman, the guard said, pointing at Fael. A Saldean, eh? He laughed. I thought a Saldean woman would kill a man before letting him take her captive. He shoved Fael on the shoulder. Olver held his breath. Oh, blood and bloody ashes. Lady Fael wasn't going to be able to take that. I wrote on here, like, finally, someone who understands Fael.
Right? Oh, goodness.
Fael slumped down, becoming small, and whimpered a reply that Olver couldn't hear. Olver found himself gaping, then forced his mouth shut and looked down at the ground. How? How had a lady like Fael learned to act like a servant?
I mean,
Ladies had to learn a lot of stuff.
yeah, they really did.
The guard grunted. Go on, he said, waving to Aravine. Wait there until we send for you. So then A shock runs through Olver like he'd been dropped in an icy lake. He couldn't breathe. The murderel seemed to glide as it moved, its cloak motionless and dead as it rounded the group. After a horrible moment, it moved on, back toward the supply camp. And here, Fael whispered to Mandevin that they're searching for channelers. Eventually, a woman in white clothing strode up and wove a gateway. Aravine barked for them all to climb up to their feet and then waved them through. Oliver joined the line, walking near Fael. And they went from red soil and cold air to a place that smelled like it was on fire. It was a ramshackle camp full of Trollocs. There were several large cook pots boiling nearby.
Gross.
Just behind the camp, a slope led up sharply to some kind of large plateau. And then he looked back up the slope behind the camp, and his heart leaped. A body was plummeting down from the top of the slope, still clutching in its hand a banner that bore a large red hand.
Oh, poor Olver.
The man and banner fell among a group of Trollocs, eating sizzling pieces of meat around a fire. Sparks flew in all directions, and the enraged beast yanked the intruder out of the flames. But he did not care.
No.
And Fael goes, or Olver whispers to Fael, and she tells him that she sees it. And they're trying to figure out how they're going to reach Matt. So Manwin comes up with the idea that if they're in a cage or whatever, then maybe they can break out, and she's like, no, because they'll take our weapons, so we're not armed. Olver did not think of much of Mandevwin's plan.
Yeah, I mean,
smart kid again.
Yeah, smart kid. Yeah.
He wanted to fight, but those Trollocs were big. One passed nearby, and its wolf-featured head swung towards him. Eyes that could have belonged to a man looked him up and down as if hungry. Olver stepped back, reached for his bundle where he'd hidden his knife. This kid's got some smarts.
He really does. He knows exactly what to do.
Yeah, like he's, I mean, it makes sense. He survived this long, right? So he's scrappy. He's figured it out, and he is making it work. We'll run, whispered Fael once the Trolloc passed, scatter in a dozen different directions, and in doing so try to disorient them, and just trying to figure out what's holding up Aravine. And then, almost as she says it, Aravine strides through the gateway. The woman in white who had channeled followed her out, and then Aravine pointed at Fael. Fael jerks into the air, and Mandevin cursed, throwing down his bundle and digging for his sword, while Arella and Solanda shouted. All three were hauled into the air by Weaves moments later. Then pandemonium followed. Few of Fael's soldiers fell as they tried to fight back with their fists. Olver dove for the ground. So fast, Olver thought with despair. Why hadn't anyone warned him that fighting happened so quickly? They seemed to have forgotten him, but he didn't know what to do. Aravine walked up to Fael, still hanging in the air. What was happening? Aravine had betrayed them. I am sorry, my lady, Aravine said to Fael. Olver could barely hear. Nobody paid attention to him. Fael kept watch on the soldiers, shoving them into a group to be guarded. More than a few of their number lay bleeding on the ground. Fael struggled in the air, her face growing red as she strained. Her mouth was obviously gagged. Fael would never remain quiet at a time like this. Again, Olver has got her down.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, that kid, he is a people person. He reads them.
Very well. Yeah.
Yeah. Aravine untied the horns bag from Fael's back, then checked inside it. Her eyes widened. She had hoped. She whispered to Fael to leave my old life behind to start fresh and new. I thought I could hide or that I would be forgotten, that I could come back to the light, but the great Lord does not forget, and one cannot hide from him. They found me the very night we reached Andor. This is not what I intended, but it is what I must do. Aravine is calling for a horse so she can ride, take the horn to Demandred. It's only Demandred. He doesn't
Yeah.
understand all the things. The woman in white walked up beside her, and the two started arguing in hushed tones. Olver glanced about. Nobody was looking at him. His fingers started trembling. He had known that Trollocs were big and they were ugly, but these things were nightmares. Nightmares all around. Oh, light. What would Matt do?
Instead of WWJD, it's WWMD.
Yep. WWMD. Dovi ande Sitovia Sagan. Olver whispered, unsheathing his knife. With a cry, he threw himself at the woman in white and rammed his knife into her lower back.
I mean, good aim. Good aim, my dude.
Good. This kid is what, like 10, 11?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And this is the last battle, and he knows it, and he understands. Like, just think of all of the things that he has to understand in this spot. Okay.
Right.
So, number one, he's in the middle of the last battle.
Mhm.
They have the Horn of Valir. They're trying to get it to Matt. Everybody is fighting everywhere. Fail, the person who was in charge and who he had put his trust in, has been taken captive by an Aes Sedai by a person she trusted, and that person betrayed them.
Yeah.
So he's watching all of these things and also is terrified out of his mind, but still has the wherewithal. I think I used that right.
Yes.
He has the brain power to recognize that this woman in white channels, and the way to stop her from channeling is to kill her so that Fail will be let go.
Yeah.
That's
or
a
at
lot.
least, distract her enough or
Yeah.
to
do whatever so that
Yeah.
way something can happen.
Right.
So this kid uses his resources.
He does.
Yep. She screamed. Fail dropped free of her bonds of air, and then suddenly the captive's pens burst open and a group of yelling men scrambled to freedom. I'm pretty sure that that's where Vannon is.
Probably, yeah.
Getting him out. So then we move forward a little bit, and Olver scuttles back under the wagon, clutching the horn, as Lady Fael rides off, with dozens of riders following her because they're trying to fake them out. Alone. He had been left alone again. He squeezed his eyes shut, but that didn't do much. He could still hear men screaming and shouting in the distance. He could still smell blood, the captives who had been killed by the Trollocs as they tried to escape. Beyond the blood, he smelled smoke, thick and itchy. It seemed that the whole world was burning. The ground trembled as if something very heavy had hit somewhere close by. Thunder rumbled in the sky, accompanied by sharp cracks as lightning struck time and time again at the heights, and Olver whimpered. How brave he had thought himself. Now here he was, finally at the battle, could barely keep his hands from trembling. He wanted to hide, dig deep in the earth. But Fael left him with the horn and told him to find another place to hide because they might come back looking for the horn. Dared he go out there? Dared he stay? He cracked his eyes open and nearly screamed. A pair of legs, ending in hooves, stood beside the wagon. A moment later, a snout face leaned down and looked at him, beady eyes narrowing, nostrils sniffing. Olver yelled, scrambling back, clutching the horn. The Trolloc yelled something. heaving the wagon over and nearly smashing it down on Olver. The wagon's contents of arrows went scattering across the ground as Olver dashed away looking for safety, and there was none. No safety. He didn't recognize anybody. He had his horn in one hand, his knife in the other, and then he hears a horse. A horse snorted nearby. It was Bella.
Good old Bella.
It is Bella. Oh my, I'm sorry, I can't.
Yep, more heartstring tuggingness from the Olver chapter.
The horse raised her head, looking at Olver. She didn't have a saddle on, only a halter and bridle. Blood and ashes, Olver thought, running for her. I wish I had wind. This plump mare would end him in the cook pot for certain. Olver sheathed his knife and jumped up onto Bella's back, seizing the reins in one hand, clutching the horn in the other. The pig-snouted Trolloc from the wagon swung, nearly taking off Olver's arm. He cried out, kicking Bella into motion, and the mare galloped out from among the Trollocs. I mean, she's a freaking good horse.
She is.
I mean,
she's excellent.
Whoever has been around horses, like this is an amazing, amazing horse. The beast ran behind with howls and yells. Other calls sounded throughout the camp, which was nearly emptying out as they converged on the boy. Olver rode as he'd been taught, down low, guiding with his knees, and Bella ran. Light, but she ran. Matt had said that many horses were frightened of Trollocs and would throw their rider if forced near them. But this animal did none of that. She thundered right past hauling Trollocs right through the center of camp. I mean, it's like she's a hero of the horn.
You with this Jaden tangent like it's always a run. She
is a hero of the horn. Legit. She comes back shiny and new. Brigida's hair is not braided in every one of her stories.
True.
And she's had other colored hair. And Luce Theron is a redhead in this life, and he was not in the last life. So I'm just pointing these out. People, their souls keep going, but they do not always look the same.
Okay, very true.
Okay, so Olver looked over his shoulder. There were hundreds of them back there. He had seen Matt's banner atop those heights. He was sure of it, but there were so many Trollocs. Olver turned Bella to ride the way Aravine had gone. Perhaps he could round the Trolloc camp and get out of the way and come back up off the heights. Take the horn to Matt, or all is lost. Olver rode for all he was worth, urging Bella on. There is nobody else. Ahead, a large force of Trollocs cut him off. So then he turns back the other way. And then a big black Trolloc arrow hit her in the flank. She screamed and stumbled and then dropped. Olver tumbled free, hitting the ground, and knocked the air from his lungs and made him see a flash of light. He crawls and he just keeps thinking, the horn must reach Matrim Cawthon. Olver grabbed the horn and found that he was weeping. I'm sorry, he said to Bella. You were a good horse. You ran like wind couldn't have. I'm sorry. She whinnied softly and drew a final breath, then died. He left her. I'm sorry. Bella Parr gets me every time.
I know.
Every time I read or listen to this stinking book. She's such a good horse.
She is.
He left her and ran beneath the legs of the first Trolloc that arrived. It's a good thing he's small.
Right.
Olver couldn't fight them. He knew he couldn't. He didn't unsheathe the knife. He just ran up the steep slope, trying to reach the top from where he had seen Matt's flag fall. It might as well have been a continent away. A Trolloc grabbed at his clothing, pulling him down. But Olver ripped. Oh my God, I can't talk. But Olver ripped free, leaving cloth in its thick nails. He scrambled over broken ground and with desperation spotted a little cleft in a rocky outcrop at the base of the slope. The shallow crack looked up at the black sky. He threw himself toward it, then wiggled in, clinging to the horn. He barely fit. Trollocs milled around above him, then began to reach in for him, tearing at his clothing. Olver whimpered and closed his eyes.
Poor little dude.
I know. So the world knows at this point that we are both parents.
Yeah.
And so this is, as a parent, is a very, very difficult piece to read. This whole everything about Olver, and then when he blows the horn, and then Noel comes for him, and he's so happy, and shiny Bella. Great.
I don't know, it just tugs at me every single time I read his point of view because I keep inserting my child into the situation.
Well, right.
And I'm like,
dude,
I would die.
I can't even.
No. Nope.
And I think it's amazing. Like, Fail does everything that she can to protect him, because staying there would not have helped. She leads a huge amount of people away, so that way he can get to safety, or at least try to run with it, to get away.
Yeah.
I think people don't see the maternal side of her very often, and I think in these sections you can, and it just, you get a whole other facet to Fail.
You do. You really do.
So now the last Olver section for this. The Trollocs ripped at Olver's arm in the night, reaching into the crack, trying to pry him free. Others dug at the sides, and soil streamed in onto him, sticking to the tears on his cheeks and the blood flowing from his scratches. He couldn't stop shaking. He also couldn't make himself move. He trembled, terrified, as the beast pried at him with filthy fingers, digging closer and closer.
Yeah, I couldn't. Nope.
That's about it. And then we know that he goes on to blow the horn.
Yeah.
But
oh man. I mean,
it brings such a different perspective to the last battle.
It does.
Right? You know, we see everything from thus far, we've seen it from the perspective of the Aes Sedai. We have seen it from the perspective of Fail, of Perrin, Matt's in here, we have Tuon, we have Min, and to me, those seem like they are third person experiences, right?
Right.
You know, we're adults, and so we see it through the eyes of the adults. This, we're seeing through the eyes of a child.
And it's different.
It is different. Like, you can't just let it go. Like, you read these pieces and it just brings you in, and you, even if you aren't a parent, you can picture yourself as a child, right?
Yeah.
You know, what would you have been thinking, feeling? Like, knowing that this is the last battle, like, could you still have made yourself go on?
I think that this whole entire point of view in the last battle from Olver shows exactly how resilient he is, because
Mm.
I can't pinpoint another kid that could actually go through that.
No, and come out so well. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, he is a different breed.
He is. He might be a hero of the horn himself one day.
Yeah.
Right?
I know there are so many people that are trying to say that Oliver is Guido Kane, and I'm like, no.
No, Robert Jordan
Timing
came
doesn't
right
work
out
that
and said, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Like, you would have had to gone like back 10 years.
Right?
And they can't do that. Like,
No.
because Guidol was with Brigida and Teleronrod a year ago.
Right.
So,
That's not how it works.
yeah,
That's
no.
not how any of this works.
No, he came right out, so that's not how it works.
Nope.
There is the other perspective, or who is it? One of the Ashamon's kids.
Mhm.
Is it Grady's kid, who's incredibly ugly, and they think that that might be Guidol.
That would be really funny.
Yeah.
Like,
So that is funny. But yeah, that has been pointed out. I'm like, yeah, that timing is much better.
yeah, it's more possible.
Yeah, more possible. So yeah. But anyway, we thought that the Oliver perspective needed to be done by itself. Like,
Yeah, and it needed to be kept G.
yep.
Or at least as G as his experiences.
Yeah.
Uh
Because I'd be very hesitant to take my kids to watch this movie.
right?
At this point, with
Yeah.
a little kid being bloodied and bruised and scraped and oh.
And the death of the horse.
Oh,
Just
of course.
oh, Bella. Poor Bella.
She comes back for him too.
All right.
So that is the end of the Oliver perspective in the last battle chapter. And a different perspective it was.
It was, yeah. This feels like this was shorter too.
It was so short. Well, we can't go off onto all of our tangents.
We can't, no. And we can't take another character with him either, because the other character will be kinky fuckery.
Exactly. And so we aren't even drinking our wine this week. Because
I know, right? I have a whole monster.
we are just taking this all very, and as it should be taken quite seriously.
Yeah.
This is a thing that children go through. So,
yeah.
And I think that the children's perspective is often overlooked.
It is. It very much is. I think Oliver deserved his own emphasis in the last battle, because Horn Sounder, come on.
Yeah. Yep. He is a kid. And yeah, it's scary. Yeah. All right. So Lenny quote. Even our Lenny quote is not going to be dirty.
No. But this whole thing here.
Whole this is rated G.
Yep.
So I just put a secret spoken finds wings. Which we may have done before, but I thought it also fit on this chapter because they're holding the horn of Valir.
Yes.
And they have to keep that a secret.
And Eravine has to keep her dark friendery a secret.
It sure does. And look at the whole thing that she pulled on them. And also look at all the trouble Fael caused by keeping it a secret from Vannon.
I know. What the heck was that?
He just wanted some Two Rivers tobacco. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Poor guy.
It would be exactly like Matt to send like a whole caravan for just one box of Two Rivers tobacco.
It is true. I mean, it might be more like Telmana's, but
maybe, yeah. But Telmana's is G. You can't.
Yeah.
No.
He is hiding.
Yeah.
All right. So, everybody, thank you for listening to this pretty brief episode of North Harbor Podcast. And we hope that you take it as we did, rated G, because it's a kid. And we don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, thanks everybody, and have a great day.
We'll see you next week.
All right, bye.
Bye.